Yesterday unveiled its 2018-2019 budget, totaling an estimated a little under 32 billion Kenya shillings, which will see 21.1 billion spent on recurrent expenditure. That's about 67% or so. And the remainder, 10.83 billion spent on development. We now want to get into that discussion. And if you have any questions about the unveiling or about the specifics of that budget, any concerns, 22423 is our SMS line. Use the hashtag CitizenExtra and I'll pose your thoughts and your questions to my guest in studio at this time. Joining me is Charles Kerich, Finance CEC, Nairobi County. Welcome to the program. Thank you for finding time to be here with us today. 32 billion. Yes. That's no chump change. That's a lot of money. How do you plan on financing such a budget?
We finance through local revenues. That means our collections. Of about 15 point something billion, and then the rest is from the equitable share from government of about 17 billion. So that comes to 32 billion.
So 15, 17, and you should be home safe.
Yes.
But it's not that easy.
It's not that easy because
the ghosts of last year, have you exercised them?
What happened is that we had a very long electioneering period. Almost 6 months of continuous elections. And at the end of it all, especially in Nairobi, after all that wasted period, we then had another 1 month of mapambano in the streets. So we had almost 7 months of very low revenue collection. As a result, we did not hit our financial target. We collected about 8 billion, which is quite a drop.
You're looking to collect almost double that now.
Yes. But, you know, the previous years had been much better. But something to note is that if you talk to the Commission on Revenue Allocation, they will tell you that each and every of the 47 counties saw a significant dip in their revenue last year. It's not a unique problem to Nairobi.
Okay.
It went across the board. So this year, I think maybe with a handshake and no more election manenos, we expect to have a better improved year.
Some members of the County Assembly felt you were too ambitious with the initial budget. I think initially it was at about 34 billion. Now cut down to 32. What are your thoughts on this?
We've had a lot of consultations with the County Assembly. We try not to impose our view, but to actually sit down with stakeholders. We had a lot of public participation where we, brought a lot of our, residents to come and give their views. And indeed, 34 billion was a bit of a stretch. We agreed. And we said, look, let's have a pragmatic and realistic budget, because if you do a budget that's bigger than what you can finance, what automatically happens is that you will then carry forward pending bills.
That's right.
You see, there is a concept that we must agree upon when it comes to government spending, both national and county governments, is do you spend the money that is budgeted for, or do you spend the money that you have? You could have a budget of, let's say, 34 billion shillings. And from what you get from the government equitable share and your own collection comes to maybe, let's say, 24 billion shillings. You have a difference of 10 billion shillings with no realistic way to plug that gap. Now, do you then commit to the 34, or do you say, look, we cannot raise that 34, let's just commit to the 24 that we have managed? Because what happens is, if you say, let's spend what we have, the way you would if you're doing your own household budget, it will then be said that you underspent. They will say Nairobi County fails to spend all this money. But in reality, you cannot spend what you do not have. So I think at some point we will need some convergence on that issue of what happens if you are not filling the gap, you don't have the money. Why can't you just be allowed to spend what you have, so that you do not, carry forward this unending problem of pending bills being pushed on year.
Okay. You also mentioned to the budget committee, I think it's the budget and appropriations committee, that there are loopholes in some of the revenue streams. Can you be a bit more specific?
There are a lot of loopholes. When it comes to parking, for example, we feel that we could be collecting much more, because the big revenue streams for Nairobi County is rates, markets, single business permits, parking, and outdoor advertising. So if you pick one like parking, we do not have 100% compliance, which is very sad. And we have actually considered even a reduction in the parking fee, but it's not in this budget. But the problem is enforcement, and it's because of capacity issues that will be addressed this year. So somebody comes and decides that I'm not paying for my parking. What is the worst that you can do? So you will clamp their vehicle, and they know that at 6 p.m. you will come and unclamp and take your clamp away. Otherwise, there's a chance of losing it. So all they have to do is get into the nearest restaurant and drink cappuccino and watch Nigeria being mistreated, and come out later and find that you have removed your clamps, and they just drive away. So that breeds impunity. And with such a system, I think the most effective way is to ensure that you have enough vehicles to tow these cars away, because when your vehicle is towed, the amount of money you will pay is punitive enough to dissuade you in future from doing that. And then another example is the markets, for example. You see, when the governor in his campaign announced that he was removing the fees charged on mama mbogas, suddenly everybody decided that they are mama mboga. So a lorry arrives from Kinangop with potatoes, it pays the cess, but once it offloads all these gunny bags full of potatoes, the person who receives it does not want to pay. And so
they're mama mboga.
Yes, that is why in this budget statement we had to clarify who mama mboga is. And we know mama mboga are those mamas who carry mboga literally around the estate selling or put them down. And but if you're within a market, you cannot be mama mboga, so you will have to pay. So it's those loopholes that then make us not to be able to get our target. In outdoor advertising, again, our target was about $1 billion. This year we've done about 700 million. But then the system again was not in place, so that the owners of billboards would be relied upon to do what is called self-declaration. To say, I have 200 billboards and only 80 were occupied this month, so I'm going to pay you for 80. But if, you know, the system we've now put in place would enable us to check and confirm and find that no, you did not have 80, you had 160. So you pay us what is due.
Help me answer some of the questions I have about the budget. For example, let's talk about the office of the governor and the deputy governor.
Yes.
Takes 14% of the total budget. The third highest allocation, I think this is after health, 20%, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and public works, transport and infrastructure, 18%. What are the key costs of the office of the governor and the current vacant office of the deputy governor?
Salaries. It's because the staff salaries are in that office. That's where they are domiciled. So we have 13,000 employees at the county. And the public service management is a function under the office of the governor, which is why all the salaries are there. And that's why it takes quite a big amount. It's not that the governor is spending it going on holidays and hosting meetings. No. It's a very pragmatic budget if you look at it. We are trying to reduce wastefulness, and once we actually put these systems in place by the end of this month, we want to aggressively go out and collect our revenue.
There was talk of cutting back on staff, either retrenchment, voluntary, or you putting up a list and saying all these people go home. How far is that particular discussion?
So we have 13,000 staff. Majority of them are very close to the retirement age. In fact, in the next 10 years, more than half will have retired. And the unfortunate part is that out of this large number, we have few skilled staff. And that is a real drain on the county. So there is need to do the voluntary early retirement. We've been engaging the National Treasury to say this process is going to cost so much money, and we will need support. But a big problem we have at Nairobi City County is that there's a lot of debt. We have inherited a debt of about 58 billion shillings. And that, we collect 12 billion a year. So you can imagine if we committed that money to pay the debt, we would spend the entire 5 years of the Sonko administration paying the debt. But one or two of the key debts that we have are for the LAP Trust and LAP Fund. These are organizations, statutory organizations, that deal with staff and their pensions and their retirement.
And you have a large number of staff.
And we have one of them is owed about 13 billion, the other one is owed about 10 billion. And what they are saying is that, hey, don't offload your stuff to us in early retirement if you have not paid us what you owe us. So pay us fast what you owe us. So
before
that puts us in,
people can then
before
retire.
you even bring the discussion of retirement, because the moment they retire, they are no longer our responsibility. They become the responsibility of the person handling pension. And the person handling pension says, but you owe me money, what am I going to pay them with? So again, you see, we need a wholesome...
So how far is the discussion on this? You know, is the governor regularly meeting with them, or are we at a standstill?
No, we are not at a standstill. The National Treasury has written to the county to acknowledge that they owe us about 8.2 billion shillings for parking and rates and so on. You know, if you go outside the vigilance house, you'll find that they have cordoned off that area. So those parking slots would have been revenue for us that is lost. So we invoice. And outside CBK, the central bank has cordoned off. That's a lost revenue. So we invoice. So from such kinds of income, they have written to say, we owe you 8.2 billion shillings. What do you want to do with this money? Now, you know, when you have 8.2 billion, it sounds like quite a tidy sum. But compared to the 58 billion that we have, it's nothing.
It's a drop in the ocean.
So we are discussing if we can use that 8.2 billion, especially to go towards these statutory debts, LAP fund and LAP trust.
It will make a
can
difference.
Then give us a space to discuss voluntary early retirement.
Fair enough.